we are going to be talking about macrobiotic diet. What exactly is that? Macrobiotic diet. I was just checking up on Google. I'm not a dietitian or anything, but it's a very rigorous diet plan, right? And that includes gentle exercises and behavioral changes. And might be beneficial for people who might be suffering from diabetes. So what we have is an internationally renowned nutritionist. She specializes in macrobiotic nutrition. So Deepthi is going to join me in 1 second. So just hang on 1 second, and we will be talking about exactly what exactly is macrobiotic diet, and what does it mean, for you, and the benefits. What are the what is it that's not good about macrobiotic diet? So all these questions, if you have any questions, keep them coming. Hi Deepthi, how are you?
Hi Anita, hi, I'm great. How are you?
Great. I was just telling our people who are still joining us, actually, we are going to be talking about macrobiotic diet. And Deepthi here is an internationally certified macrobiotic nutritionist and clinical nutritionist and a certified alkaline health coach. If you want to add something about yourself, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I my journey into wellness, I would say, started with macrobiotics, but yeah, it's been almost 8 to 9 years now that I started with macrobiotics, but I got so inclined towards this whole science that after macrobiotics, I have been doing certain other things, like I studied yoga, then I studied Ayurveda, and there's it's been such a interesting science that if you go back and learn all these ancient modalities, you see all of them converge at a certain point. And that converging point is the science of balance, rather, I would say. So, yeah, so, that's where the journey started with. And now what I practice from the dietary perspective is macrobiotics, not 100%. It's a mix of raw and living food along with macrobiotics and some principles coming in from Ayurveda. So it's a medley of different practices coming together. But that's where I kind of could figure out that it's powerful because so macrobiotics, it originated, it's an ages old science. So considering the kind of lifestyle we live today, not possible that we follow it 100%, but a lot of principles definitely are very powerful from macrobiotics. So, I try to pick up those principles and apply it to my practice. And also keeping in mind, how we live today, what are the requirements from the dietary and lifestyle perspective that may very well apply to us in today's times. And that's how I kind of, work with a medley of different practices coming together. Yes.
Sure.
So
So
that's
let's
the
just,
whole idea.
so let's just define. So I think we want to keep it very simple as for the followers. I also don't know much about macrobiotic diet. So what exactly is my macrobiotic diet, right? So let's just define that first before we go into more details.
Sure. So first things first, macrobiotics is not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Okay, like Ayurveda in itself is a complete world in itself, which incorporates everything. Similarly, macrobiotics is a whole world in itself, which talks of the concepts of balance. So how you look at things from the macrobiotic perspective is looking at things from two different extremes, specifically the food side of it, two different extremes. I'll give you an example. There's just consider there's a scale. It starts from 0 and goes up to 10. And when you start from 0, on one side lies extremely salty things, and on the extreme right lie extremely sweet things. So what macrobiotics would say is you would be healthy when you are gravitating more towards the balance. So the more you go up the curve and stick to the foods which are up right in the center of the balance is where you maintain your balance. Now, to give you an example, what kind of foods fit into this parameter, a very typical example I would want to take, something like an alcohol, right? So somebody who consumes alcohol will not ever crave for a salad, will always crave for something like a fish or a chicken or something very salty, like crispy and salty, or chips or something. So this kind of very beautifully defines the two extremes. One is completely on one extreme of sweet. Alcohol is glucose, complete sugar, and the complete salty side of it is like fried fish or that salt flavored chicken and all that. So your body is trying to attain that balance. Body is very smart. It knows what does it want. So when it is going in one direction of consuming something very very sweet, automatically it will gravitate towards, after a certain while or along with your meals, towards more salty side. Now what happens is, in a way, this is balance. Like if you look at it, if if we are consuming sweet, we are also consuming salt. But this is a negative balance. Why? Because it's the balance on the extreme sides, and this extreme kind of creates a lot of imbalances inside our body. So what we are supposed to do is, we are supposed to go up the curve and come into the center of the balance. Now, from the dietary perspective, what are the foods that lie in the center of macrobiotics are, whole grains, pulses, vegetables, fermented foods. Then you have nuts and seeds. So basically, precisely everything that is directly coming into practice from the nature is what macrobiotics incorporates as balancing foods. This is a broad spectrum. How you apply it to the body is considering the condition of each person. So in macrobiotics, how we analyze your condition is, we look at you from two perspectives. One is your condition, the other one is your constitution. So constitution is something like genetic, which you are born with, and condition is something that has manifested because of some imbalances which may have happened inside the body. So we try to kind of come with kind of consider all those areas, considering what kind of a person you are, like similar to how Ayurveda looks at it, like what kind of a person you are. You more vata kind of a person, or a pitta kind of a person, or kapha kind of a person. In macrobiotics, we'll see, are you more of a yin kind of a person or a yang kind of a person? And these terminologies are very synonymous to the two extremes that I'm talking about. So yang is more concentrated side, yin is more easy flowy side. So if you are more of a contracted kind of a personality, now these are very typical macrobiotic terms. I'm not very sure how much you'll be able to grasp, but when I'm using these terms, these actually mean what I say. For example, somebody who's very thin and lean, and somebody's face looks very contracted, and as if the juices have gone out of the body. That kind of a person is more towards the yin side. Now, if you want to really make them bloom, you will have to include foods which are more on the yang side. So what would be the yang side? It would be uh, designing your plate in a way where it's a good combination of whole grains, pulses, vegetables to a certain amount. But for this kind of a person, we'll go ahead with more on the whole grain side. Why? Because this is where the from the nutritional perspective, those kind of energetic components are getting into his or her body, which are
Yeah.
making kind of, which are trying to open them up. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to go systematically right now before we go into too much into the details,
Yes.
right? So let's just go systematically. So what I want to understand is, I was reading on Google right now before our call, is that macrobiotics is a very restricted diet. It doesn't allow you to eat fish and chicken and meat, and also has a lot of limitations on some of the other vegetables like tomatoes and some other things, right? So it's a very restrictive diet as far as some of the nutritional deficiencies are concerned. So I want to talk about that right now, is that if it's a restricted diet and it's only restricted only plant-based diet, that is what at least the Google said. And within the plant-based also, it's a restricted diet on some of the foods that are not included, right? So what are the benefits of macrobiotic diet? We are talking about balance, but if it's restricting so many other things, what would be the benefits?
Okay. So, when we say it is restricted, it is partially true and partially not. Let me just try to explain that first. It is restricted, yes, because it cuts down a lot of foods, but the kind of foods that it cuts you down on are the foods which now science is also proving are not very good for us. Something like dairy, something like refined and processed foods, something like extreme foods, like the ones that we just talked about. So it definitely, the beginning happens with the first step getting into macrobiotics is about eliminating all these foods. So now if you look at it, dairy is something that a lot of people would not want to go away with. So that kind of becomes restrictive for them. But for a normal healthy person who doesn't have a lot of imbalances, right? In that scenario, you still can kind of, it's more about your cooking skills, how you bring together a lot of components together to kind of mix mash things to bring about those nutritional elements out of that spread of macrobiotic foods that it allows, which is again whole grains, pulses, vegetables, nuts and seeds, and fermented foods, sea vegetables, not sea animals, sea vegetables, Fish is allowed. Like, you can have fish, but the only, so why it becomes restricted is for the people who have highly imbalanced conditions. For example, somebody having cancer, somebody having diabetes or blood sugar imbalances, or specific conditions that you come to us with. In that case, we cannot give you that entire spread of everything like we can give it to a normal person. So in that sense, yes, it becomes restrictive. But if you're already a healthy person, you will be still able to eat from that widespread. If your cooking skills are good, you can still make the best out of it, is what I would say. So uh, like, I have been onto it for last 8-9 years. Not, of course, 100% is not possible, considering, if you're traveling also, and then various things keep happening. But what has worked for me in macrobiotic diet is picking up those principles, understanding that the very first rule is I will try not to go to the extremes, because that is where the imbalances will start to happen. Okay. And even if sometimes I do not have a choice but to go to the extremes, my next meal would be again, balancing meal. So I will try to compensate for whatever wrong I did by having next meal in a very balanced way. Now, when I say this balance, this varies person to person, like, depending what kind of condition, what kind of constitution, and what is it that you have had in the past meal, which needs some balancing. For example, again, I'll take the example of alcohol and meat, or whatever salty you crave for. So this is, now these two foods are very, very extreme, which means you really need to work on yourself to detoxify, to bring your system in balance before you move on to getting onto the specific routine. So what is going to be the next step? The very first step is going to be, you need not eat anything solid after the next meal, is what my practice had been. The very first thing, go high on liquids. Why? Because you have been on two extremes, completely on two extremes. You need to give your system a rest. Nothing from that center is good until the effect of those extremes have come down. So when I say liquids, it doesn't only mean water. It can be something like green juices, which will bring about that balance. So what happens is, from the scientific perspective, how you look at the approach of macrobiotics is from the perspective of alkaline, acid and alkaline approach to foods and diet. So which means when you have consumed foods from the extreme categories, you have made yourself acidic. Okay. So when you're in the center is where you're working on yourself to make yourself alkaline. When you are going towards the extremes, you are becoming acidic. When you're getting acidic, even if it is a very good food, but your body is acidic, it will ultimately convert that alkaline food into acidic unless your system gets back into balance. Okay. So the very first step is to get your system back into balance. Starts with the very basics. Have a lot of water. Green juices are amazing because these alkalize your bloodstream. So when I say acidic, we were talking of the bloodstream. Your bloodstream is getting acidic. You alkalize it with a lot of green juices. Now, green juices would be something like it can be a wheatgrass shot. If you're not doing your own wheatgrass, it can be something like, green powders, barley grass powder or a wheatgrass powder. Better still, if you want to go ahead with these, live energy kind of foods, it could be something like seasonal greens available in your area, just washed really nicely and juicing them out. I'm not talking of smoothie and making, kind of adding few things and just taking it in, though that is also good. But if you're wanting that cleanse to happen at a deeper level, I'm talking of liquid nourishment, juice.
Okay, so
Taking
let
in,
me interject. Let me interject a little
yeah.
bit. So I don't understand, quite honestly, what is the difference between this and a plant-based diet? I mean, it's exactly a similar kind of a thing we are talking about. So
Yes,
right.
it is.
So we're
It
not,
is.
and it's again, I think it's a, except for there's restrictions and a fancy name out there. But
Yes.
what is the
No,
difference?
no. Okay. So, plant-based diet is a modern term and a very, very wide category in terms of anything and everything from the plant kingdom and fruit kingdom is allowed in a plant-based diet. Like when you see a plant-based diet, you will see the spread is really huge. Like, there is no differentiation between what kind of vegetables these are. So, okay. So in macrobiotics, how you look at fruits and vegetables specifically and rather all of the foods is basis their energetics. So that is one of the broad differences. Let me give an example. When you talk of energetics, now this is a very subtle understanding of the whole thing. But how you look at it is, if you look at the human body, if you divide the human body in three parts: the upper part, which is just above your ribs, the central part, which is your digestive area, and the lower part, which is below pelvis area. How you look at the energetics is, any vegetable. And if you look at how the foods grow on earth, they either grow on the surface of the earth, or they grow below the earth, or they grow upwards toward the earth. Okay, so when you have to apply these foods to a human body for healing purposes, you will see what kind of, again the beginning point is, you will see what kind of condition and constitution a person carries. That's the number one step. Secondly, we will see if a person is weak in the upper part of the body. How do you know that? Somebody who has these depressive and being sad kind of tendencies, or somebody whose lung health is not very good, or somebody whose breathing is not very good. We will use these upward rising foods for healing them. So what would be the upward rising foods? Would be something like green leafy vegetables. And if you see, now science has also proven that green leafy vegetables are very good for your lung health. So green leafy vegetables means going very high on these GLBs. Then central part of the body, somebody who has severe digestive issues, or any kind of digestive issue. It could be starting from constipation to stomach issues, or hydrochloric acid issues, whatever. We will stick to the foods which are balancing, which grow on the surface of the earth. What are these kind of vegetables? Something like round vegetables, something like a pumpkin that doesn't grow on top, that doesn't grow on the bottom. It grows on the surface of the earth. Somebody who has imbalances or weakness in the lower part of the body, which means uh, reproductive health, or weakness in the legs. We will use these strengthening foods, something like the ones which are growing under the earth, for the healing. So just to clarify this point, plant-based diet and macrobiotic diet do have strong synergies, but macrobiotics is more, the principles are based to heal you. So, which means even if you have to cut down a lot of foods, there is some reason behind it. We are trying to bring back your organs into balance. Now, all these concepts are not part of a plant-based diet. Plant-based diet simply says you should be eating clean. So that's the premise behind plant-based diet, which means even if you have digestive issues, if you have any kind of imbalances happening inside your body, these imbalances will not have a healing approach in macrobiotics. Oh, sorry, in plant-based diet. In macrobiotics, we will see, like, let me give you another example. Somebody who is very high on acidic levels. Somebody has high acidic levels inside the blood, and that acidic levels start impacting that person in the joints. Somebody starts to have these arthritic kind of tendencies. Now, for these people, there is a category of vegetables called nightshades. There are 4 different vegetables which are a part of nightshades, which are tomatoes, potatoes, all kinds of capsicum, and brinjal. Okay. Now these are the 4 foods. These have certain chemical which, if you have arthritic tendencies, can just increase your pain, and this acidic condition, which can impact further, have a negative impact on your joints. So for such kind of tendencies, we will completely make this person go off all these 4 different kinds of vegetables. What we will put them more on is more alkalizing kind of foods, something like green juices, green leafy vegetables. And another difference between plant-based diet and macrobiotic diet is the way you cook them. Like in macrobiotics, foods is one part of it. It's just the 50% part of it. The other 50% part of it is how do you cook them. That is a very, very broad area in macrobiotics. Like, and the cooking techniques are very, very unique. Like there's something called a Nishan style vegetable. There's something called a pressed salad. There's something called a so there are different kinds of cooking techniques. Now these cooking techniques are based on the concept of energies again. Like something like a sauerkraut or a pressed salad is nothing but very small fermentation, small time fermentation, using certain specific kind of vegetables. Again, you can keep in mind the condition of a person when you're doing those. What this will do is because so vegetables have this, when they're leaving their juices, it is something like they're coming upwards, right? When you add salt to vegetables, it starts to leave its water. It's more of a upward kind of a tendency, yang kind of a tendency. And then when you put a pressure on top of it, it is more of a yin kind of a tendency. You're just trying to kind of create a pressure from both the sides. Now this becomes balancing in macrobiotics. So these are, from the outside, it does look that plant-based diet and macrobiotics is quite common. Of course, similarities are there. The similarities are majorly because the kind of food spread that includes is about 70 to 80 or 90% the same. But the choice of foods, depending how you apply it to a person from their condition and constitution perspective, understanding the energies of food from the extremity perspective, whether they are more on the yin side or a yang side, and the cooking styles. This differentiates macrobiotics from plant-based diet. And additionally, macrobiotics also has a spiritual angle to it. So it's not just about including certain foods which are from the plant-based category. It is also about bringing in those elements where you know how spiritually they are impacting your mind also to kind of help you live more on the high vibration side, which plant-based diet by nature does it, but then there is no specific direction to in a plant-based diet that you're going that path only. It's more about clean eating and making sure that you're eating all foods which are coming from the nature. So
All right, so let's
that's how
just
that is.
okay. So what are these macrobiotic diet? Is this applied specifically for certain conditions like diabetes or blood pressure, or is
Yes,
it like a healthy
yes.
person can also go on a macrobiotic diet?
No, so okay, so let me just take up my story. Okay, just to answer your question first, macrobiotics can be taken up by anybody, so there is no hard and fast rule to it. But macrobiotic diet has been it's one of the known diets, rather the only diet which has been proven very powerful for cancer. So it's
For
one
can
diet which is cancer, yes. Specifically for the reason because it is very highly alkalizing. Even plant-based diet is alkalizing, but then how you create your spread by bringing in those foods which completely make your platter alkaline is what macrobiotic diet is all about, while also bringing in the balance. Now when I say balance, this balance may vary for person to person. For me, that spread will be different basis my balance, and for you the spread will be different basis where do you stand right now and what kind of balance do we need to bring in into your body. How do we come to know about that? We kind of, so that there is a specific different approach of analysis also in macrobiotics. Like face reading is one of the approach. Somebody with under eye these puffy eye under eye bags, very in some people it's quite visible. So now what this is indicative of somebody who's holding who's not able to flush out a lot of water from the body. Now in macrobiotic perspective, then how we look at it in macrobiotics is if this person is more is because he or she is holding water, they have a lot of dampness inside the body. So how you categorize different conditions in the body is it's also based on the science of energetics. Basically, one of the conditions is about dampness. Dampness is something like edema or water retention inside the body. So we will not call it edema, we will call it dampness. Now then we will apply a protocol, macrobiotic protocol, that helps you to kind of get rid of that dampness. Now this protocol will include uh, cutting down on a lot of foods which are giving you edema, which will not be a part of the plant-based diet. Plant-based diet will not consider all these concepts. Then it becomes restrictive. Also, the restrictive part comes into the picture here, because then we know that we have to help the kidneys, we have to help body flush out the water, and there could be certain foods which may not be good for that flushing out of the water. For the kidneys, then we'll go ahead with something like black colored food, something like kidney beans or black beans. These are the energetics of these black foods really work well with kidneys and help purge out the that holding of water inside the body. Then from the whole grain choice perspective, we'll go ahead more with buckwheat, because buckwheat has this drying tendency. So if you have a lot of dampness inside the body, it kind of absorbs all that dampness out of the body. So it becomes, in this case, of course, it becomes restrictive, but for a purpose.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
are trying to bring your system to a balance. Once the system gets back into balance, then you can go ahead with that broader spread. So it's about first getting you to a level of balance. Once you achieve that, then gradually you can move on to enhancing your spread the way you want.
Sure.
So
No, I
that's how
think
it
I
goes.
think this is very informative, because a lot of us don't understand, what macrobiotic is. I looked at the topic and I didn't understand, so I had to go and understand it.
No, no,
Any
no, that.
questions anyone has? People are commenting. That's a very informative session. We can also do a detailed session on this, why it is helpful. I mean, these are just small 15-minute sessions that we do on a daily basis, just to educate and empower and users. So anyone has any questions, comments, feedback before we wrap up today? Okay. All right. So, well, thank you so much, Deepthi, for being with us. And I think it's a very informative session. I must say that
Thank you,
a lot
Anika.
of
Thank
people
you.
don't understand what the difference is. I did not understand what the difference is. So I think it's equally, how would you summarize it in one line? to the followers?
Okay, so I would say, okay, let me give you a clue or a homework that you can do at your end. So I just talked of the extremes of foods, right? So how do you begin? Even if you don't understand the concepts that we're talking about, of course, it's deep rooted. But what you can do is you can at least start eating foods which are in balance. How do you know which foods are in balance? Just go to Google and just try to search for this balancing food chart. So there's a macrobiotic food chart which says, which gives you a chart which is something like a geometrical D kind of a chart, which gives you the foods which lie on the two different extremes and which takes you in a semicircular way, takes you through these foods upwards towards the balancing foods. So even if you don't understand the concepts, but you understand that, okay, the foods which lie in the center of that D
Yeah.
is what I need to be more on 70 to 80%, you will start the healing inside the body. And it's like generic. It's for everybody. We go to the specifics or the healing part only when we know that there is certain condition. But then again, first step again any day is going off the extremities. That's the beginning for everybody, irrespective of any health condition that you have.
Okay.
So
Some questions about fatty liver. We are not talking about fatty liver. Is it a fat-based diet menu for?
no.
No, it's not, right?
No. It's okay. So it's low insulin, low blood sugar lowering diet. So any diet which makes you produce less insulin or balances your insulin levels and which makes your blood sugar go low is the beginning of healing of any kind of health condition. It could be diabetes, it could be cancer, it could be so any health condition, lifestyle disorder that you talk of today. If you can do anything about bringing down your blood sugar and insulin imbalance, is where you are helping yourself from the healing perspective on that food spectrum.
Sure.
Macrobiotic diet is deals with this area of
Okay. Yeah.
internal imbalances.
Okay. So
So
it's a
which means it
balancing
becomes healing
diet.
for anybody and everybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a balancing diet. So
Yes.
people who are watching this, check it out. I'm also going to check it out. This is something, a topic we wanted to bring it and empowering all of us and educating what exactly is macrobiotic diet and how does it help. And like Deepi is talking about, for diabetes, for cancer, even for healthy people, is more about balancing diet rather than going into one spectrum of alkalinity or acidic, right? So just to
Yes.
keep it very simple and straightforward, like for us to comprehend what it is. All right. Thank you so much, Deepti, for being with us. Very informative session, a new topic, at least for me, for a lot of people who don't understand. And thank you again for being with us. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Anita. Thank you. Thank you for
Yes.
having me. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye.